So, here's the question. Xbox or PlayStation? Which one's better this time around? Now that is actually a really good question. Now the reason that it's a great question is because they are both very similar, but there's some slight differences that makes one, in my opinion, a little better than the other. Now, that being said, the ultimate choice is yours, so let's talk about which is better, the Xbox or the PlayStation. Now first and foremost, the easy thing to talk about is the fact that you've got this one side of Xbox and the other side of PlayStation that is just, they hate each other. I don't know why, because it's essentially the same thing. Inevitably, when it comes to PC gaming, it's far superior to both of these, which are trying to become PC gaming, but they're not. So let's talk about which one of the two is better. Now, obviously you've got two things. You've got a price difference right off the bat. You've got four versions. You've got a digital and a non-digital version of both the Xbox and the PlayStation. So what we're going to do for the simple purpose of this video is we're going to compare the best version of both of them. Not the either win, I guess there's not really a big difference, but we're just going to see the best difference of both of these things, and that's how we're going to compare them. So first off, let's talk about the easy thing where one is a clear winner. The best controller that made huge leaps this time around is the PlayStation controller. The Xbox controller added a button. That's what they did with all their time. The years of experience they added a single button. That's it. That's all they did. But PlayStation, on the other hand, added really neat systems where you basically have the triggers. When you pull them, there's a resistance factor based on what is going on in screen, or I guess on screen itself. And it's just a really clear winner in my opinion. You've got the light system, you've got a whole memory pad touch kind of thing, and there's apparently a little bit of a different style of response to vibration, allowing you to feel different parts of the controller vibrating based on what is on screen. Now, I don't know because I haven't tested that yet, but I know that it looks like some pretty cool stuff. Now, so the PS clearly, in my opinion, takes the controller game this time around. Now, when it comes to games, now that's the next thing. Which one has better games? When at release, the PlayStation 5 is going to have way more games that are meant for a new generation console. Xbox does not. But in the long run, Xbox has some really big exclusives that people are going to want to play, like Halo being one of them. The new Halo series is going to be huge. So when it comes at launch, PlayStation is going to have more overall games. But in the long run, Xbox has some bigger exclusives, in my opinion. So take that one's kind of like a tie, if you want to call it that. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about, who plays on these consoles? Now, the answer is simple. If you look at the numbers, just the numbers from PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, most people are going to stick within their realm that they feel comfortable with. If they've played Xbox, they're probably going to play Xbox again. If they've played PlayStation, they're probably going to PlayStation again. But if you look at the actual numbers, 50% of consoles sold, if we look at PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch, 50% are PlayStation. It's a huge amount. Xbox, give or take 30%, and then Switch, 20%. So, way more people play PlayStation across the world than Xbox. Xbox is pretty much not really a world-based thing. It's more popular in the United States, seemingly. But around the world, PlayStation seems to be a more popular thing. Now, that being said, let's talk about the actual specs of these devices. Now, they have some really cool specs for the first time, I can say this. They have dedicated CPU and GPU, which is pretty cool. They've got some new storage systems that's going to make games way faster to load. So which one wins? Now, if you look at the CPU, which is basically like, if you want to think about it, the brain of the computer, the Xbox takes a slight edge over the PlayStation. If you actually look at it, it's a slight gigahertz difference. I'm not going to go into that whole techie thing behind it, but the Xbox is slightly faster when it comes to the CPU. Now, the CPU of the PS4 is not bad, or the PS5, sorry, is not bad, but it's still slightly worse than the Xbox. Now, if you look at the actual GPU, which is the graphics unit, which is going to give you really pretty graphics on screen, it's kind of like the muscles of that device. The GPU is slightly better. We're talking a little bit better on the PlayStation. It's able to produce a little bit more speed on it, which is a good thing overall. Now, that being said, it's not much of a difference. You're not going to notice it in-game at all. You're never going to notice it. But it is slightly better on the PlayStation. So the PlayStation takes a slight edge on that aspect of it. Now, the next thing, if you look at frames. Now, what really matters to gamers is frames. Frames per second is something that measures how many pictures per second a system will give you. Now, Xboxes and PlayStations at this moment in time, for the most part, hit 30 to 60, which is, it's okay. You're not going to notice big differences. The human eye really doesn't notice much more above like 60-ish tops. But these new consoles are going to give it to you at approximately 100 or more, which is a huge difference. And they're both about the same. I'm not going to try and sit here and say one's better. They're both pretty much the same for that actual frames per second. Now, what's really cool about them, though, the more frames per second you have, if you want to imagine it this way, if something is moving across your screen, okay, as it moves across your screen, it is going to register in frames per second. So if I only have 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, I'm only going to see it really quickly go across the screen. However, if I have 30 different points going across the screen, I'm going to be able to track that thing move across the screen. So the more frames, the better overall your console is. And they're pretty much tied at that point. Now let's talk about storage. When it comes to the actual amount of storage on a PlayStation versus an Xbox, it's pretty easy. They both have about the same. They both have just about a terabyte. The PlayStation has 800, give or take, where the Xbox has 1 terabyte of storage. Now, that's a slight difference. We're not talking too much. And they both have expandable slots, which means you can add storage to it. What's cool, PlayStation has NVMe, which is kind of like super advanced storage. That's going to be a lot faster than the Xbox storage, but you're not going to notice that much of a difference playing on a console. That's what it comes down to. But that's what that's your choice. So all of that being considered, 2 things. The answer is simple. Overall, if you look at the actual performance and the number of players and what you're going to get out of the system, the better deal is going to be a PlayStation 5. However, the better games, in my personal opinion, is I have my friends that play on Xbox, so I am going to get an Xbox. The difference is so very slight that you're never going to notice a major difference, but that being said, it is slight enough where I think the PlayStation 5 overall is a better machine, but for me, I prefer the Xbox. Let me know what you think. If you guys are going to be getting one or the other, it's your call. So anyways, hopefully this helps you out. If there's anything else you want to see, let me know. Teach.